Hey, do you want to know where your anxiety comes from? What do you mean, comes from? I know where it is. I know what triggers me. No, that's not the point. That's not the point. And when you find where it comes from, but a little bit deeper in a different way, we don't go there, but we learn from it, it disappears. Hey, if you really want to let go, have a listen after this. Hey, this is the Personal Development Unplugged podcast, where we use hypnosis. Yeah, hypnosis. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Don't worry what it is. It's just a mass of processes that we're going to get you to change. Change to let go of anxiety, low self-esteem, and create massive supreme inner confidence. But that's confidence in your competence and competence in your confidence, which means you can do anything and be safe, to enjoy the world as it should be, with you at the helm, creating the life that you want. That's what this podcast is about. You and being the best you could be, singing from your real voice, aligned with your mission, aligned with your passions. That's what it's about. So if you're interested in letting go of anxiety, if you're interested in letting go of fear, guilt, all those blooming syndromes, imposter syndromes, and every little bit of the mind which is negative, then have a listen here, because we've got some wonderful processes and lots of good conversations between you and me to get us both thinking in such wonderful ways. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Just take the chance to have a listen.
Warning.
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 Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Hey, my friend, good day. Good day to you. Another longer podcast at the Personal Development Unplugged podcast end, as it were. Now, we're talking about, where does your anxiety come from? That's a different question normally. Where does it come from? You see, most people will think about what triggers it right now. And I don't want to know that, because I don't think it helps that much. It does sort of help knowing the triggers, but we're not specific enough, as it were. What do you mean? What do you mean, Cluffy? Well, what I mean is, right now, your anxiety has generalized itself. And that's a natural phenomenon. If I could say that, it's easy for you to say. And we're going to use this phenomenon to generalize the good stuff, because it just works. You see, what happens is, something happens in your life, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. The changes that you make, whether they're negative or positive, start on one thing. But they're all connected. And your unconscious mind seems to go, well, say, for example, here's an example. I worked with a young lady who was frightened of loud noises. More particularly like firework loud noises. And she thought it was a phobia. It was a fear, or whatever it was. But the thing is, she said she felt out of control. Which you can understand, when you get those loud noises and the fear gets you, she couldn't control herself, and that fear had got there. And she also talked of different places where she had a similar type of fear. Ooh, because I thought it was just a phobia about one thing. Well, not I, she did. But the thing is, after we did the work, and she did the most important thing you could ever do with the work that you do, is to test it. No point in being lovely and relaxed in clinician's chair and feeling so relaxed, listen to hypnosis, that you don't bother to check to see if it's worked. Well, she checked. And she phoned me up and said, hey, Paul, I've been to a party. There was loads of fireworks, and I was a little scared to start off with because I knew I'd got to test this stuff. You told me to, but it was absolutely superb. But here's the funny thing, she said. Remember we talked about, I was having a little bit of trouble at work? She said, I feel so much control of myself at work now. I feel in control of myself. And that's exactly how I didn't feel. And now I do. It's now, and I feel when I go out socializing, I feel more in control. And therefore I feel more confident. And things just get more and more confident each day. So can you see how you change one thing and your unconscious mind goes, well, actually, we could use it elsewhere. Similarly, like a negative thing. I'm going to protect you here. Oh, this is similar. I'll protect you the same way over here. And it generalizes. Now, I want to talk about not how you feel now. Because again, we're saying it's a generalized thing. Because it's grown, you see. This feeling of anxiety will have grown. It'll become more intense. What do you mean? How do you know, Paul? How do you know, Cluffy? Because I do, by the way. Because I do. But the thing is, when I talk to clients and I think about it myself and I do this, and we'll do it with you. I say that a bit more slowly, and I'll do it with you in a moment. The very first time your unconscious mind did something for when you were a little boy, a little girl, and it tried to protect you. And that's what it's doing now. It's trying to protect you more than ever. But it was only small then. And now, as over the years, you've got bigger, you've got more things that you want to do, more things that your unconscious mind thinks, do you know what? I've got to protect them even more. So instead of looking at different things to do, it says, I just do the same thing even more. So if it had a little bit of fright, a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety at the very beginning, trying to protect you, it says, this is my experience anyway, your unconscious mind says to itself, I've got to double this to really make sure. And I'll give them maybe a few thoughts in their head, maybe a little voice in their head that goes, whoa, this could be bad. Or maybe some pictures, a movie in their mind of showing how bad it could be. All for the wonderful, wonderful intention of protecting you. And all it does is more of the same. More of the same, but more intense. Now then, you might be saying, well, how do you know that? Well, this is where I said I'd come back to you and we'll go through it. Just think now. We're not going to go back to and relive all this stuff, but just notice that feeling that you have when you're anxious right now. Maybe just remember where it is in your body and then go back in time. Maybe go, say it's like a snowball. My metaphor is it started as like a little small snowball at the top of a hill. That was it when you were really young. And as you get older, it's coming down the hill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger snowball, more and more intense. So if you were to go back up that hill just a little bit, maybe go back a year ago, just a year ago, and think about that feeling. I bet it was a little bit less intense. Go back 5 years ago. I bet it was even less intense than that now. Think about it now, right now. And if you were to go back even further, notice how that feeling seems to diminish because it didn't need to be that strong back then. And now it does because your unconscious mind keeps doubling and doing what it did back then, but just more. So back to the very first question. Where did that anxiety come from? In other words, where did it begin? And we don't really need to know the why it began. Not yet, anyway. Sometimes it's good to know, but there's something about that can be really important. And I've got a special way, a secret way. It's one of those secrets that's hiding in plain sight, but it's a secret I'm going to share with you because it's not a secret. I don't have secrets from you. We'll go through it, but here's the question. If you just notice that feeling of anxiety just a little bit, and you were to think of the earliest time you felt that feeling, what was the emotion that you felt just then, right at the beginning? Because it's not always fear, it's not always that anxiety. Very often when I talk to a client, I'll get them to re-access or access that fear they came in and they want to change, the anxiety. I'll ask them to go and just say, if you were to know the very first time that you experienced this or can remember experiencing it consciously, what was the emotion present? And they sometimes go, well, it was guilt, it was shame, it was something different. It might have been frustration. Could have been anger. It's not always fear. Or it could be something, could be scared. I was a little scared. Not the full-blown fear or anxiety that it is now. So sometimes that's a good question to ask yourself. I don't want you to go there. I don't want you to go back there now. Honestly, I don't. That is not an embedded command. I just want you to think, if I were to know the very first time I felt this anxiety, what was the emotion present right back then? And just notice maybe it's a little different. That's all. And it can be. And don't worry if it isn't or if it hasn't changed. Either way, it doesn't really matter. We're just exploring. And this is the whole point about this personal development. When you explore things, you learn. Because you see, I took as a meta description, something overall for this particular episode. And it's your responsibility. I'll say that again. Let's get it clear. It's your responsibility to change if what you're doing is no longer working. It's your conscious understanding, that is, to say, well, this isn't working. I want to be safe. Obviously, I'd love to go through the world without being frightened, to be protected from things. But it's not working because I'm really frightened. There's always that conflict that goes on. So that's what we're doing. We're just understanding because it's our responsibility. And when we get to see this understanding, I think your unconscious mind, well, I know it does. It's earwigging. It's listening in. It can't help it because it's your best friend and it's going, oh, what's Cluffy talking about now? What's this feel? Oh, yeah, I have been doing the same thing over and over again. You keep saying it's not working. Why is it? There's that conflict, you see, because I'm trying to protect you from something that's fearful and I'm making you anxious, which is fearful. So there's a direct conflict. So we've got to change it. You see, that's what we're going to do. You see, here's the good news. Here's the good news. The good news is way back then at the very beginning, when we call it the root cause, the very first event, and we call it the very first event when disconnected would allow this negative emotion to disappear. You see, way back then, your unconscious mind did what it could do to protect you. It did what it could do with the wisdom and experience that it had back then, that you had back then. And you were probably very small. You were probably pretty young. Therefore, how much wisdom did you have? Not so much. How much experiences of life did you have? Not so much. Probably learnt them from other people, but even that, it wasn't, probably your mind wasn't taking it all in. Your unconscious mind did what it did with that wisdom and experience that it had back then, doing the only thing it could do. The only problem is, it hasn't changed. That's what we're saying. But you see now, right now, this very moment, take an in-breath with me. Look around right now. That's just a pattern interrupt. I just want you to just get into the moment and know that you are so much older. I don't mean it in that way, but you're so much wiser. You have such a hell of a lot more experiences. And with those experiences, you have learnings. You have learnings through all those experiences. You have positive learnings. And we should say, yay to the learnings. Because there's so much more than the wisdom and experience that you had way back then. Of course you are. You see, that's what's going to preserve you, to make you safe when we get your unconscious mind to realize that. We're going to do that in a minute. But you see, I want to give you a side note. This is what I was thinking. And I tell this to my clients. You see, a really good hypnotist can go, do you know what? Let's take that memory away. If it wanted to. It wouldn't be a good hypnotist. I think it would be a bad hypnotist who did that. And I'll tell you for why. You see, if you take the memory away as if that experience never happened, what would happen? I'll give you an example. Give you an example of a friend of mine. A friend of mine long time ago when we were all a lot younger. Less wisdom, less experience, less life experience, no streetwiseness type of thing. He'd been out and he's sort of partying and had a few drinks, few pints, and it was late at night. Well, it was early in the morning. And he's walking home by himself. Not a good move, is it? And as he was trying to cross the road, he thought he would go down the underpass in the dark to cross the road, underneath the road. Not a good move. And what happened? Well, the thing you really don't want to happen. He got beaten up and robbed, mugged. And they beat him up pretty bad. He had to go to hospital for a night and things like that to sort himself out. Then he came home, and obviously he's a bit fearful about going out now. He's got these aches and pains. He's got that memories, a bit like post-traumatic stress disorder, a little bit. Got a few memories going on. And maybe they're playing out even more than worse than it was. Just making it, the unconscious mind going, yeah, that's how bad it was. We don't want to go do that again. And because of that, he didn't want to do that again. So he didn't want to go out. And the more he didn't go out, the more he didn't want to go out. Because he felt safe. But he wasn't doing anything. And then he started to get agoraphobia. Or, as you say in the States, agoraphobia, I think. Anyway, same thing. Now, what would happen if a hypnotist said, okay, sleep, and that memory will disappear completely, and takes the memory away, which you can do. Not a good move whatsoever, and I'll explain why just in a minute. And he took that memory away. Say they did. What would happen to my friend? He would have no recollection of what had happened. He'd have no fear. That's what we want, isn't it? He'd be able to go out late at night, down underpasses, and get beat up again because he hadn't the learnings of that event. Now, a good hypnotist, a good hypnotherapist would get his unconscious mind to realize that the wisdom they had back then, the experience they had back then, was not enough. And just using fear was now in conflict because he's making him more fearful about going out to protect him. Wasn't working. But it was a learnings. If you could learn from it and preserve those learnings and use those learnings, you don't need the emotion. And that's what unconscious minds do. Once they learn, they don't need that negative emotion to protect you because they've got the learnings. So if a good hypnotherapist was working with my friend, they would get all the learnings. He wouldn't have to relive it. He wouldn't have to go back there because you don't have to do that because they're a good hypnotherapist. They get the unconscious mind to learn from that event. They call it a SEE, a significant emotional event. Go back there, learn it. Maybe do a little bit of phobia process as well. Just really get the fear away anyway, but really learn from it. And then, when he's out of trance and he's thinking about, well, I'm going to go out tonight because I can, because I'm not fearful. But I'm going to take my phone. I'm going to make sure there's a taxi, a cab, or the Uber, or I'm going with some friends and we're all driving and there's a sensible driver, a designated driver, because they're learnings. And with that, why would you need to be frightened? Because you've organized things. You've used the learnings. Now, do you have to learn it consciously? Well, I think I've answered that question a little bit. No, it's unconscious. You can learn consciously. Sometimes quite nice to have the unconscious mind bubble up some of the learnings to your conscious mind if it feels it's appropriate, if it feels it's safe. Sometimes it likes that connection. But if I have a client who doesn't understand or I didn't get any learnings, Paul, but I've changed, I'm doing things differently, they're unconscious learnings. You see, I would say something like this. You see, you didn't consciously create that problem. You didn't consciously create anxiety. You didn't consciously create fear. You didn't decide consciously, I'm going to be anxious today and scare the living daylights out of myself. I'm going to get a panic attack. I'm going to get those palpitations. I'm going to be unable to do the things that I want to do. Now, you don't consciously think that because it's an unconscious decision. It's an unconscious reaction triggered by something. So, if you didn't consciously create it and you unconsciously did it, we go to your unconscious mind to learn and change. This is why you don't need those learnings. But here's the thing. I had a little think, because you see, I could try to do it now, unconsciously with you, but I don't want to. So I want to give you something else to do. And it's where you're going to work in tandem, in alignment, congruently with your unconscious mind. So conscious and unconscious mind. And I want you to have a little think. I want you to have a little think. And you don't have to go back to the very first event. I just want you to imagine something. Just imagine, there was a younger you back then that must have experienced something back then. And you got an idea, a slight idea, probably. What I want you to do is just think. Think this. Ask yourself a question. What did that younger you need back then? What did it need back then? And I want you to write it out. Why do you write it out? Because it's permanent. You can come back to it. You can think about it. You don't have to finish this process because sometimes the process is going to take a little time just to really consider what that younger you needed. But what are you getting now consciously? So what did the younger you, say that again, what did that younger you need back then? You see, it might be confidence. It might be love. It could be an inner strength. It could be understanding. It could be, like my friend, could have had awareness. Awareness of danger or potential danger. But also, I want you to think about that just for the moment. I'm going to give you one more that's normally missed out. One more I give all my clients, and they always nod unconsciously. Just think for the moment, though, what did that younger you, or even say it to yourself, what did that younger me need back then that would have helped in that situation? You don't even know what the situation is because unconsciously and intuitively, you will know. So it will be something like love, confidence, inner strength, understanding. It might need self-esteem. It might need just a contact. And if you could, write them down now. Type them on your phone. Do something just for a moment. Stop, maybe just pause this episode and randomly just write them down. You can come back and add to them. You can change them. They're not cast in stone, but I want you to do them quickly. They're like consciously, but unconsciously now. Write a few down. And then, if you did, pause, welcome back. But there's one important thing that younger you needed back then. And it's the knowing. What do you mean the knowing, Cluffy? The knowing that everything is going to be all right. Because back then, that younger you didn't know that. But you do now because you're here. You're here in the room with me. And therefore, you've made it. You survived. It's a bit dramatic, Cluffy, but you're here. You've done a lot of things, but you're here. And that's one thing that your younger you back then didn't know, wasn't sure about. So it's knowing it's going to be okay. Knowing that you're going to get here. You're going to grow. You're going to learn. You see, guess what? All those things that you wrote down, those, I guess they're emotions or their behaviors. Maybe there's a belief in there. That belief of knowing. Believing you've got that inner strength, that understanding, that awareness. But the thing is, to know that you needed it back then means that you have them now. Because you couldn't imagine them, you couldn't think of them right now if you didn't have them inside you. If they weren't part of your wisdom, they weren't part of your experiences, they weren't part of your learnings right now. From then, way back then to right now, you have those. You have those wonderful qualities inside. And guess what? When you have a quality, you have it in abundance. And the bloody thing about abundance is the more you take from it, the more it grows. So you have them. Now you might say, well, I don't have them in every context of my life. And who cares? Who gives a shit? You have them. That's all. You've only got to have had them for a second, but it means you have that quality. You have that skill. So you have them all in abundance. So what else have you got that younger you could have needed? And think of that, because you've got it all now. And as you do that, here's where I want you to, maybe if you've got things that are on your mind, or you have something that you need to concentrate on or needs your attention, just pause and then come back to me, because I want you to just imagine something. And sometimes it's good to do it with your eyes closed, but certainly I want you to pay full attention to this. So if it's okay, and it's safe to do so, always make it safe to do so. You can always come back, listen to this first, and then come back and just make a note of the time, the minutes gone by. And I want you to imagine if there was a younger you standing in front of you and just below you, just so you could see that younger you. Maybe they're sitting down. I love to see them on a stage, below you and in front of you. And I like to see my younger you sitting on that stage, waiting for me. And as you notice that younger you, just imagine sending that younger you those qualities, those skills, those strengths, those positive emotions, those positive beliefs, and maybe behaviors. So send them that confidence, send them that love, that awareness, that strength, that understanding, and anything else you wrote, and anything else you think of right now. And as you do that, send them that knowing that it's going to be okay. And I don't know how you're going to do that. That's your imagination. You might see it as a wonderful beam of light, just a flow of energy. Could be anything. But just imagine sending that younger you all of those qualities. And I bet, pretty safe bet, but I bet you see that younger you, imagine that younger you just suddenly transforming, changing. And as you do that, and keep sending all these wonderful qualities, just ask your unconscious mind, repeat these words, or let my words go into your mind. I want to ask you, my unconscious mind, what can I learn from that earlier event, that root cause? The learnings which will allow me to let go of this anxiety, let go of this negative emotion, this fear, and use all these wonderful learnings and these qualities. The qualities I didn't have then, but I have now in abundance. And maybe, and it's a pretty damn good maybe, you, the unconscious mind, will recognize that by having what you needed back then, right now, in abundance, having all those qualities that you really needed back then, that younger you, but you have them in abundance right now, you don't need that old program. You don't need that old way of reacting to the triggers because you have all the learnings. You have the wisdom, you have all this experience, you have all the qualities. And thereby you can find a better way, a wonderful way, by using those learnings to protect them in a better way. And I wonder with this, what would it be like if all these wonderful feelings, these wonderful skills, these emotions, the learnings and the wisdom were to begin to generalize into different areas of your life? Imagine having more confidence in different areas, more control, more awareness, more knowing that it's going to be okay. It's okay. What would it be like right now to have these wonderful skills in abundance in all different areas of your life, all different contexts? And you might want to imagine it just now. I don't know. Maybe you do. What would it be like if you imagined having all that you needed, that you have right now in abundance, in every area of your life? How wonderful would that be? What would it be like? And as you might think about that consciously, I want your unconscious mind to do it even more thoroughly and really notice how you can be protected without fear, without anxiety, but with full confidence, awareness, love, control, and every other positive emotion, belief, but especially all the learnings from that event and all other learnings that you have. So they're all available to you. Whenever you need them, they'll be there. Because that's what you do. Because it's your responsibility, unconsciously and consciously, to change if it no longer works. That's what we said right at the beginning, doesn't it? And you see, I wrote a little note to myself. How did I want you to feel through all this? Listening to this and thinking about this. How did I want you to feel? And it was a little bit like, I want you to feel like an aha moment, go, I get it now. I think consciously, I seem to understand, but I really intuitively feel that my unconscious mind gets this and will do it for me. Now, what I do want to say is, this will work. This definitely works. But sometimes you do need a little bit of help. You need help from a qualified, bloody good therapist. I would say a bloody good hypnotherapist. Someone who does bloody good hypnosis, who is excellent at NLP, does a good job at timeline therapy, and has a wonderful array of skills, and doesn't just do the same thing over and over again, and certainly doesn't read a script. There's still people reading scripts, by the way. How bad is that? But if you are finding this anxiety a little bit difficult to deal with, and sometimes, I like to work with my son sometimes. I don't tell him the details about it, but I get a little bit lazy and I think, I'd like you to do it. Just help me along a little bit. So get one-to-one therapy. Someone like myself, I work online, but this isn't a push for me. I just want you to find the right help so you can do what we did. I know it will help. But if it's a little bit more acute, a little bit preying on your mind, get one-to-one. Go one-to-one help, because it'll work really quickly. Do not be fooled by people who say it needs to be sessions after sessions after sessions. These go really quickly. I would expect you to feel different after the first session. I'd expect you to really be finished within 2, maybe 3 sessions at the very most. My clients very rarely come back for the 3rd session. They keep thanking me and disappearing into the sunset. But here's the thing. You've got one-to-one if it really is a bit of an issue. And I do say, don't put it off. You go do it, because the rest of your life is going to be wonderful, and even more wonderful, because you've taken the responsibility to change, because the things you're doing no longer works. And when I say that, if it's a negative feeling, it's not working. Now, you've also got my Supreme Inner Confidence program. Yes, you know it. Go to paulcloughonline.com and you'll see it. As you scroll down, you'll see Supreme Inner Confidence. I know Supreme's a bit of a heavy word, but that's what you do when you have to put things on websites, apparently. But it's all about changing the past, learning from the past, understanding what's happening in the now, and then changing the now and the future. 3 steps. I think it's really good. Getting some good reports from it. So anyway, have a look there. If you've signed up to the hypnosis tracks, paulcloughonline.com/podcast, you get an email, and you also get some a monthly newsletter. And there is a discount code there, which you get a massive discount on all my products, but that one as well, Supreme Inner Confidence. So have a look there if you want. You've also got, as I said, those hypnosis programs that I've put up there, and they're 50 plus of hypnosis and NLP processes. And you'll find things there, changing your state, letting go, all that stuff. So you can do some stuff there as well. Whatever you do, take the responsibility for your change. Talked about it before, about whose responsibility it is to change, and it's yours. Be at cause. Because when you're at cause and you take responsibility for your actions, you will become empowered. And that's another positive emotion, feeling, or whatever you want to call it. When you feel empowered, you can do anything, as long as it's safe. Anyway, there you go. I hope this was of interest. I really hope that I explained it with clarity, crystal clear clarity. I hope so. If I didn't, let me know, for goodness sake. Email me, feedback@personaldevelopmentunplugged.com. Email me, say, Paul, you made a cock-up of it. I didn't understand this. Can you explain that? Because I will. Or if it's, I don't know, intuitively you think of, there's another thing I'd like to know a bit more about. Again, email me with that, and we'll come up with a process and an episode, especially just for you, which I know when we do, it's going to affect so many people in a good way. So with all of that, I'd just like to share my supreme thanks for your time, because it's valuable. And talk about sharing, by the way. You could share this episode. You could share the whole of the Personal Development Unplugged.com, is it? Paul Cloughie, Personal Development Unplugged podcast. You could share that with everyone. If you paid it forward to everyone you know and asked them to pay it forward with everyone they know, well, everyone would know, wouldn't they? But maybe just 1 or 2 or more. And so we all get to share changing, and then let that generalize into everywhere. Good stuff. Making this little old planet Earth a place to live in and enjoy. Anyway, until the next time, my friend, have more fun than you can stand. Okay, and I wonder, just finishing, what would happen if your unconscious mind decided to surprise your conscious mind to feel happy for no reason? And with that, we're going to fly away.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.